Three sinister road trip horrors revealed, terrifying true tales of the hidden and cursed. The sun hung low over the faded blue minivan, its hum a soft lullaby that lulled the Johnson family into a false sense of peace. They were looking for a way out of debt, out of stress, and into the arms of warm family in a little town in Missouri. As they pushed down Route 66, thick green fields blurred past, and the reassuring roadside diners turned ominous. They passed isolated farms. Worn-down barns creaked like whispered warnings. Thoughts of relief twisted into a cold knot. At that moment, it felt like they were trading their troubles for something darker. Then came the sputter, a sickening cough, then silence. The minivan gasped its last breath. Panic cascaded through the cramped space. They were marooned. The remnant of civilization faded with the sound of rustling leaves, replaced by an oppressive silence so thick it felt suffocating. They waved at passing cars, a frantic familial signal of hope, but none stopped. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, locals stalking the edges of their sight, eyes glinting like predators watching prey. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie colors that danced with the unease growing in their chests. "Let's find help," Mark finally suggested, his voice shaky. They moved toward the distant flickering neon of a diner, a flicker of hope. Silent dread rode with them as the gas station signs turned mocking in the twilight. Inside, the atmosphere was dense, thick with strange energy. They could hear whispers, echoes of lost families entwined in curses that clung to the walls like shadows. The air felt wrong, weighed down by something unnameable. An affable mechanic appeared at the bar, his smile too wide, grease-stained hands resting on the counter. "Where y'all from?" he asked, each word dripping with curiosity. Suspicions needled their hearts. Outside, flickering shadows moved closer. They could feel their own eyes widen, mirroring the growing panic in their chests. Familiar faces, lurking from the depths of their memory, blended with locals silently observing. Abruptly, their youngest, Katie, vanished into the bathroom. Worry morphed into terror as moments stretched. They called her name, their voices trembling with fear. Silence answered. The diner's lights flickered, segueing into the distance where Katie had disappeared. Suddenly, the mechanic stood outside, eyes gleaming, watching with rapt attention. Mark's heart raced, a chilling realization hit. This wasn't just folklore, it was a warning. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference.
Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With adrenaline surging, they plunged outside, hearts hammering. Panic crested like a wave crashing down, their only focus to find her. But darkness swallowed them whole, gales of laughter wafting through the night. Faces emerged from the dark, and with dawning horror they realized this small, innocent-looking town was not simply a stopover. It thrived on outsiders, luring them in and devouring them whole. As they stumbled deeper into the night filled with whispers and anticipation, the haunting truth began to emerge. This family road trip, meant for reconnection and relief, had become a gruesome tale of survival. As dawn anticipated the horizon, the reality faded beneath their feet. A chilling question hung. Would they uncover the town's secrets, or become just another chapter in its dark history? The shadows closed in, a suffocating veil that wrapped around the Johnsons. Mark's throat constricted as laughter echoed in the distance, harsh and mocking. Each sound felt like fingers clawing at their sanity. They searched frantically for Katie, their voices cracking in the overwhelming silence. "Where could she be?" Sarah whispered, her eyes darting toward the diner, now a monstrous figure looming in the darkness. The familiar glow of neon lights twisted, morphing into something grotesque as malevolent silhouettes flitted behind the glass. Desperation gnawed at Mark's belly like a wild animal. "Stay close, don't lose sight of each other," he instructed, moving deeper into the gloom. They crept along the diner's perimeter, searching every shadow. Their breaths quickened, quick gasps slicing through the stillness, unsettling the night creatures hiding beneath the distant rustlings of foliage. Suddenly, the entrance of the diner swung open, and the fluorescent light spilled out, bright against the suffocating blackness. The mechanic appeared, a grin hanging too loosely on his pallid features. "Looking for someone?" he sang, the words dripping like poison. "Get away from us!" Sarah shouted, but her courage sliced through the air weakly, nearly drowned by the ominous laughter still laughing behind the diner. Mark edged closer to Sarah, the chill creeping up his spine. "Isn't it time you folks had a little fun?" The mechanic's tone shifted, becoming smooth and chilling. The very air thickened. The hum of the diner, once a backdrop to their plight, now felt charged, alive with anticipation. "We just want our daughter," Mark demanded, voice trembling, but shaking it off, he added, "She's just a child. Please, let her go." The mechanic tilted his head, as if savoring the stir of fear that hung palpable around them. "Children bring the family together, don't they? But our ways tend to be different. You'll all be together soon enough."
With that, he stepped backward, disappearing into the light, leaving an unsettling silence behind. Immediate horror shot through them. If Katie were really with him, every moment they waited deepened the despair. Mark turned to Sarah, her eyes wide, flickering with concern. "What if he's helping her?" she whispered, dread curling in her gut. In that moment of uncertainty, the laughter rose again, bubbling nearer. Mark grabbed Sarah's hand, and without another word, the family darted toward the side of the diner, guided by instinct, driven by fear. Their hearts pounded in unison. Each step echoed through the stillness, a quickening beat of impending doom. As they turned the corner, they stumbled upon a small alleyway, drenched in shadows. Glancing down, they saw the bathroom door standing ajar. It creaked gently, as if inviting them in. A flickering fluorescent light barely illuminated the ground beneath them. Mark's mind screamed danger, and unsettled urgency propelled him forward. "Katie?" he called again, desperation spilling from his lips. Silence swallowed his words, hanging heavy. The alley felt alive, vibrating with a strange energy. Mark squinted into the darkness, searching every inch for any sign of their daughter. But instead, he noticed something else. A trail of small, backward footprints, each disturbed formation inching further into the alleys between two crumbling buildings, disappearing into the suffocating dark. "Do we follow?" Sarah wondered, fear lacing her question. Mark hesitated. Each second stretched into forever, but turning back wasn't an option. Dread gnawed at them, whispering reminders of the laughter that thrummed around them, pushing them closer toward whatever horror awaited. As they took a shaky step towards the unsettling footprints, the laughter intensified, reverberating off the walls. This time, it wasn't just coming from the diner. "Mommy! Daddy!" Katie's voice rang out, splintering the air. It sent a bolt of adrenaline through them. They couldn't turn back now. Clutching each other tight, they plunged into the darkness, where Katie's cries narrowed down ominously. But what awaited them might echo louder than just her pleas. As they plunged deeper into the alley, each footfall felt like a countdown to horror. Shadows twisted around them, stretching and contracting in ways that defy understanding. Mark and Sarah's hearts raced, thrumming in their chests like caged birds desperate to escape. The darkness seemed to pulse, alive with a sinister energy that clung to their skin and weighed them down. "Katie!" Mark called out again, his voice cracking as the sense of urgency grew tenfold. There was no answer, just silence, thick and suffocating. And that dreadful laughter, the kind that could peel paint from walls, snaking through the air again. It was closer, almost as if mocking their desperation. "We shouldn't be here," Sarah breathed, her hand trembling in his grip, but Mark ignored it.
They needed to find Katie. They needed to know she was okay. Following the small, backward footprints felt like walking on an invisible thread stretched across a chasm. One wrong step, and they might slip into something they couldn't escape. Yet they pressed on, inching toward the cruel laughter that churned in their ears. The alley grew narrower, suffocating their senses, and the fluorescent flicker above buzzed menacingly, casting eerie shadows that danced like tormented spirits. Then a door creaked open further down the alley, revealing a narrow shaft of dim light. It flickered wildly, carrying echoes that drew them closer. "Mark, wait!" Sarah pulled back, uncertainty clouding her eyes. But Mark flicked his gaze to the light, and with a push he stepped forward, unable to resist the whisper of hope mixed with dread. As they approached the door, Mark's pulse quickened. "Katie!" he croaked, leaning closer in an attempt to peer inside. The light flickered more violently, then abruptly went out, plunging them back into the oppressive dark. They stood frozen, breath hitching in their throats. The laughter faded momentarily, like a retreating storm, but the tension remained, coiling tighter around them. Suddenly, they heard it, a giggle that sent shivers cascading down their spines. It was Katie's laugh, bright and innocent, a stark contrast to the nightmare that surrounded them. "Mommy! Daddy!" The call echoed again, this time slathered in playful delight, as if she were playing a game of hide-and-seek. But something twisted in Mark's gut, a sense that this was not the same child they had known. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, eyes wide and glimmering with fear. The laughter grew louder, merging with a chilling melody that drifted from nowhere. Mark gripped the door handle, feeling the cold metal burn against his palm. Whatever lay beyond this threshold would be their only chance to find Katie. He turned to Sarah, searching for that flicker of reassurance, a glimmer in the dark. All he found was her terror-laden stare. With a quick glance back at the narrow alley filled with chaos, he pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a small, dimly lit room with peeling wallpaper. The air inside felt thick with something foul, the remnants of decay wafting in like a ghostly presence. And there, in the middle of the room, was a figure, a small silhouette hunched over, facing away from them. "Katie?" Mark whispered, fear gnawing at his insides. The figure turned slowly, and in the dim light he could finally see her face. It was Katie, yet something was off. Her eyes glimmered with a hunger that chilled him to the bone, a strange glint shining within them. Behind her, shadowed figures began to creep forth, monstrous shapes curling at the edges of the light, hungry and waiting. "What have they done to you?" Mark gasped, backing away instinctively, his heart hammering in his chest.
The laughter exploded into a cacophony, filling the room with an insatiable echo that drowned out everything. It crescendoed, before plunging into a silence that swallowed them whole. Mark's breath quickened as he lost sight of Sarah in the dark. Then he heard it, a low whisper that came from the shadows behind Katie. "Join us!" He stumbled backward, heart pounding, as the door slammed shut behind him, trapping them inside. And as the shadows drew closer, Mark understood this would only be the beginning of their worst fears. What would happen next? Would he be able to save Sarah and Katie from the darkness that now engulfed them? The shadows surged around him, deepening, twisting into grotesque forms that writhed and whispered, the air filling with a rancid smell that clung to Mark's nostrils. His heart raced as he struggled to breathe, every instinct screaming at him to escape. But there was no way out. The door was gone, swallowed by the darkness. "Katie!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. The shadows slithered closer, wrapping around his ankles like cold fingers, dragging him into their churning depths. Sarah's absence was a void next to him, a sinking panic that throbbed in his chest. "Sarah, where are you?" His voice echoed, thin and frail. Suddenly Katie's laugh rang out again, but was tinged with something so wrong that it froze him in place. "Daddy, look!" Her innocent voice sang out, but it was layered with something sinister, a crystalline echo that didn't fit the sweet little girl she had always known. Mark could barely turn without bumping into a wall of shadow. He felt a tugging at the corners of his mind, an insidious pull that beckoned him to join the darkness. "No," he gasped, forcing himself to take a step back, ready to bolt, but he couldn't take his eyes off Katie. She stood there, her tiny form illuminated by an unsettling glow, her smile wide and sharp like a blade. "Don't be scared," she said in a voice that wasn't quite her own. The shadows behind her wriggled in response, coiling tighter, eagerly awaiting orders. He shook his head violently, tears leaking from his eyes as he strained to see any sign of Sarah. "Katie, what are you doing? Where's your mother?" A flicker of recognition flashed across her face before being replaced by a cold mask of glee. "Mommy's just playing too. She'll be back." The words were sweet, but the way she spoke made his skin crawl. Before he could respond, two shadowy figures lunged forward from the dark, silhouettes with elongated limbs and faceless heads. Panic surged through Mark, igniting a survival instinct. He spun around, searching for anything, an exit, a weapon, anything to ward off the impending doom. The room began to tremble as the laughter intensified, vibrating through the peeling walls. "Join us, Mark," Katie sang, her voice dripping with a nectar of malice. "Fun, His pulse drummed madness into his temples. Fun! This isn't fun!
You're not my Katie! He could hardly recognize her. The light around her began to pulse, dancing wildly like a beacon of despair, revealing the grotesque nature of the figures. Electric fear took hold as he saw Sarah's shape emerge from behind them, her expression contorted in horror. "Mark!" she cried, reaching towards him. "Run! Please, run!" Her voice shattered through the laughter, shocked and desperate. But before he could move, a strong pull snatched Mark backward. The shadows ensnared him, dragging him toward the heart of darkness. He fought, clawing at the air, his own shrieks lost amidst the raucous laughter. "Join us! Join us!" The chorus echoed all around, a maddening chant that robbed him of rational thought. His throat constricted as he felt the cold breath of the shadows wrap around him, promising him everything he feared, while also offering a glimpse of dreadful ecstasy. Just as darkness threatened to envelop him completely, Mark took a deep breath and screamed, "No, I won't!" In that moment, a blinding flash erupted from the center of the shadows. Light, pure and stunning, splintered the dark, momentarily pushing it back. The shadows hissed and writhed, recoiling from the brightness. Katie winced, a murky flicker of her true self peeking through the overwhelming darkness. "Daddy?" She sounded fragile, lost, like a child terrified in a storm. But in the next breath, the shadows charged forward again, furious, trying to regain control. A horrifying realization hit Mark. This wasn't just a battle for Katie or Sarah. It was a war for their very souls. As the light flickered weakly, Mark locked eyes with Sarah. "We have to fight!" The darkness surged again, but now it felt different. The edges of despair began to blur. What if... Sarah's voice trembled with a revelation that suspended the air between them. "What if we can break it?" Before they could form a plan, the shadows lunged, and Mark braced himself as darkness descended once more. Something had to give, but they would need to risk it all to reclaim their family. Would their courage be enough to break the grip of this sinister nightmare? The shadows lunged, gleaming with anticipation. The shadows slammed into him like a tide, swallowing Mark whole as he tried to pull away from the grasping tendrils. Panic surged through his veins, electrifying every nerve, igniting his fight or flight impulse. "No! Come on, Sarah!" he screamed, the desperation clawing at his throat. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony that rattled his bones. It wasn't just Katie and Sarah's voices anymore. It was everyone he had ever known twisted into a chorus of madness. Faces blurred in and out of the dark, friends, family, everyone staring, grinning, eyes wide with horror and joy. Mark felt himself slipping, the darkness threatening to drown out the last remnants of will. He had to focus. In this twisting nightmare, he couldn't afford to let despair take hold. "We have to keep the light alive," he urged. The flicker still remained between them like a fragile ember in the chaos. "Mark!" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. "They want us to lose hope!" She seemed to gather some strength, the intensity of her presence pushing back the shadows just slightly. "Remember the stories? The way to beat the darkness is to find the truth!" "Truth?" Mark shouted, wincing as the shadows clawed at him, burrowing deeper into his psyche. "What truth? We're trapped!" "What if the darkness is feeding on our fear of losing each other?" Her brow knitted as she stood firm against the oncoming tide. "What if that's their weapon? We need to believe in each other. We need to hold on to what we love." Her words struck a chord in his heart, igniting a flicker of that love, a memory of laughter in the sun, the way Katie smiled when she first learned to ride her bike, the way Sarah's laughter danced in the air. The shadows hesitated for a fleeting heartbeat. "Fight it!" Mark roared, finding something deeper within himself. As if summoned by their shared resolve, a soft glow emanated from his palms. The light grew stronger, pulsating like a heartbeat, as he and Sarah channeled the memories of their life together. But the shadows surged again, a dark tidal wave drawn to their fragile light. "You can't fight family!" Katie's voice swung through the chaos, sweet and taunting, a haunting melody embedded with anguish. With a glance at Sarah, Mark felt a painful certainty. They couldn't give in. They couldn't let the darkness win. He closed his eyes, remembering every single moment they'd cherished together. The love, the warmth, the laughter.
The emotions poured out like a torrent. "Together!" they both shouted, their voices melding into one. The shadows recoiled, hissing and sputtering, as the light grew, weaving a barrier around them, a protective cocoon. But the darkness did not despair. It raged, thrashing violently, and the air thickened with rage as it turned even darker, threatening to engulf them once more. The figures became more defined, dark and twisted, reaching towards them, begging to be let in. "Mark! Katie!" came a voice that shattered the noise. A shadowy figure emerged, Sarah's mother. Mark barely recognized her through the black fog, her face twisted into a silent scream, eyes wide with hopelessness. "What have you done?" she rasped. "You shouldn't have come here. This is a prison of our own making." "Mom," Mark whispered, heart racing. "Then we can break it. We can break free." But just as he thought they were on the edge of a breakthrough, the shadows lunged again, this time with a fury that was terrifying and beautiful. The laughter crescendoed, a haunting symphony clamoring for their surrender. "Please, help us." Katie's voice, now desperate, cut through the chaos, urging Mark to remember that family was both a blessing and a curse. "Can we trust her?"
Sarah asked, fear etched in her voice. Mark's heart plummeted. Could they even trust their own daughter anymore? Another wave of darkness surged, mixed with the taunts of 1,000 souls, drowning out the last whispers of hope. And as they prepared for what felt like the final stand, Mark tightened his grip on the light, ready to battle the looming dread. But just as he stepped forward, the shadows shifted again, revealing a path, a way out, or a trap. "Do we dare?" he asked, eyes darting toward Sarah and Katie, their faces a mix of fear and determination. The air crackled with tension as the shadows lurked hungrily, waiting to feast on their next moment of doubt. The choice lay before them, risk it all or remain shackled in darkness forever. Which way would they choose? Mark felt the shadows pulse, thick and hungry, as Sarah and Katie stood beside him, both of them trembling. The path twisted before them, a narrow opening that promised freedom, but felt alive, the darkness around them swirling like thick fog, eager to drown their hopes. "This could be the way out," he whispered, forcing his voice to sound confident. He needed them to believe it. "But what if it's a trap?" Katie's voice quivered, barely above a whisper. "What if it leads us deeper into this nightmare?" "We can't stay here," Sarah snapped, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "If we don't do something, we will be lost forever." The shadows pulsed again, making the air around them dense and suffocating. Mark clenched his fists, drawing on the warmth that still flickered within him. "Together, right?" "Together," Sarah nodded fiercely, a spark igniting in her eyes. As they stepped closer to the path, the shadowy figures shifted to block their way, their faces twisted in silent screams, mouths opening wide in a grotesque mockery of pleading. The cacophony of laughter rose, each note echoing with a malevolent joy that threatened to crush their fragile resolve. "Remember who we are," urged Mark, squeezing Sarah's hand tightly. "We are more than this darkness." With every step, Mark focused on the memories, pulling them tightly around him as a shield, their family bond, the moments of warmth. "Don't let them take you." The shadows flared as if their anger could be weaponized, hissing in frustration. Mark released a solid breath, feeling the light within him grow stronger as they moved forward. The path snaked through the crowd of darkness, jagged edges like teeth ready to devour them. "Go," he shouted, his voice ringing out above the chaos. He pushed forward, dragging Sarah and Katie behind him. But the shadows weren't finished. With every heartbeat, they pushed closer, filling the air with despair. "You can't escape," they cried, the echoes of familiar voices morphing into something sinister. "Join us, Mark." "No," he screamed back, defiance coursing through his veins. "We won't lose ourselves to you."
As the darkness lashed out, a figure broke free from the writhing mass, a shadow that morphed into a clearer shape. It was his father, his face contorted in pain, but desperately reaching out as if to grasp Mark. "Dad, you're here!" But even as the recognition sparked a fleeting moment of warmth, dread washed over him. Was this truly his father, or merely another trick of the shadows? Mark hesitated at the edge of the path, the pull toward familial love battling against the threat of what loomed behind. "Mark, don't listen," Sarah yanked him back. "It's not real." Yet the figure of his father twisted, frozen in time, his sorrowful eyes pleading for help. "Save us, son. We are all trapped here." The air turned thick, swirling around them as Mark felt himself being pulled in two different directions, toward his father and the slippery path that faded into darkness. "Mark," the whisper dripped with despair, echoing in his ears. "Choose," Katie shouted, eyes blazing with apprehension. "Now," Mark barked, resolute. The shadows roared, desperate to reclaim him, their jagged hands clawing at his resolve. In a split second, he felt the warmth of Sarah and Katie's hands intertwining with his. They were stronger than the shadows, weren't they? He took one last look at the shadow of his father before shaking his head, knowing he needed to trust in the light within themselves. "We go together!" And with that, they thrust themselves down the path, the darkness collapsing behind them like a hunger unfulfilled, howling in anguish. The path twisted unnaturally, and the shadows merged into a singular growing mass as they sprinted ahead. Breathless, the fear pulsed in and out, leaving them chilled to the bone. But then an unsettling silence fell. "What now?" Sarah whispered, scanning the void around them. Mark's heart thudded. They'd rejected the familial warmth of family, but at what cost? In the darkness ahead, a pale light flickered, just a glimpse dancing through the black. What lay beyond it? "Do we head toward it?" Katie asked, uncertainty trailing her words. "Do we dare?" Mark murmured, the specter of their choices wrapping around them like an invisible fog, leaving only questions burning in their minds. Would that light be their salvation, or a deeper descent into darkness? The flickering light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing them in. Mark's legs felt heavier with every step. Shadows danced around them, whispering secrets that scratched at the edges of his sanity. "Maybe it's not a good idea," Katie said, her voice trembling, but there was a flicker of determination in her eyes. Sarah snorted. "What's the alternative, Katie? Standing here with the shadows? We made it this far." Mark's heart raced, a hammer against his ribs. He couldn't let doubt creep back in. "Okay, let's check it out." With a deep breath, he stepped into the light. It was soft, warm, illuminating the darkness just enough to reveal the surrounding chaos. But the moment they crossed the threshold, everything changed. The shadows retreated, hissing and writhing as if burned by the light. Mark felt a surge of triumph. Maybe they were safe? But that hope shattered when the light flickered again, and a new form began to emerge. It was a woman, draped in gossamer threads that shimmered like spun glass. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow and cold. "You shouldn't have come here," she intoned, her voice a haunting melody that tugged at the very essence of his being. "Who are you?" Mark demanded, compelled by both fear and curiosity. "I am the keeper of the light. But bear in mind, this light does not belong to you. It is a temporary sanctuary from the darkness." The shadows crept closer, their cries morphing into a single blood-curdling wail. Panic surged through Mark. "What do you mean? How do we escape?" he shouted, scrambling to keep his composure. The keeper tilted her head. "To escape the shadows, you must confront them. Your fears, your guilt, your past. Only by facing the truth can you claim the light for yourself." Katie quivered beside him. "Face our fears? How? They'll drown us." "You must decide," the keeper continued, her voice a chilling echo in the stillness. "Stay in the light and face the looming darkness. Life will never return to what it was. Or flee back into the shadows, remaining blind to the truth, but it will follow you forever." Mark felt his breath catch. This was their choice, but how were they supposed to confront what hunted them? He glanced at Sarah, her eyes mirrored his dread. "Let's just go," Katie cried out, fear clawing at her. "We can't face what's back there." As if in response, the shadows twisted and morphed into darker forms, reflecting their deepest fears, shapes of what could have been, what they had lost. In the darkness, figures surfaced, haunting images of their failures, regrets, and the loved ones they couldn't save. Mark's heart twisted at the sight. No, don't let them get to you. But one figure stepped closer, his mother, her face a mask of despair. "Why did you leave me, Mark?" Her voice came like a dagger, piercing straight into his soul. "Breathe," he whispered, the tension curling around him like a noose. "We can do this. We have to face them together." The light pulsed again, synchronizing with their racing hearts. Mark squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, steadying himself. "Let's not just survive. Let's fight." As they stepped forward, hearts pounding, they felt the pull of despair wane slightly. The shadows shrieked louder, clawing at their sanity, but determination ignited a fire within him. They had to confront the horrors lurking in the dark, bring the light back to their lives. But then, a deafening silence fell once more. A split second later, a thundering roar echoed around them, sending them tumbling back. Mark's heart sank as he understood the truth. The real darkness was just beginning. "Are you ready?"
Sarah asked, fear contorting her face. The flickering light dimmed, shadows swirling with renewed fury. "Together," Mark choked out, and they steadied themselves, eyes locked onto the maelstrom of their memories rising from the depths. With one last breath, they plunged deeper into the shadows, braced for whatever horror awaited them. What chilling revelations would they uncover as they faced their darkest truths? The shadows closed in like a suffocating fog. Mark's heart raced as he clutched Sarah's hand with a grip that felt like iron. The deafening roars seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere, instilling fear deep in his bones. He was desperate for answers, but even more terrified of what they might reveal. As the swirling darkness thickened, vivid shapes twisted around them, echoes of past traumas, images of loss, regret, and guilt. Each silhouette lunged into the light, grasping for their consciousness with clammy hands. A memory flickered in his mind, painted in anguish, his mother's face, sunken eyes and trembling lips murmuring, "You didn't save me." "No!" he shouted, shaking off the vestiges of sorrow. The shadows recoiled for a moment. He could feel Sarah's breath against his cheek, fast and panicked. "Mark, we shouldn't be here," she gasped, glancing at shadows that took the forms of haunting phantoms, distorted versions of family, friends, and recreations of mistakes he couldn't amend. "I can't let it control me," Mark shouted back, determination burning under his fear. He stepped forward, drawing Sarah along with him while fighting against the clutches of despair. "We need to focus. We need to face them." But even as he spoke, the shadows shifted again. Dark tendrils formed shapes mirroring the struggles they had faced together. Mark's gaze fell upon a gnarled figure resembling a man he had once called his best friend. With hollow eyes and a mouth twisted in rage, it bellowed, "You abandoned me." A cold shiver ran down Mark's spine. It hit him. Every time he had been selfish, every time he had turned his back on someone in need, surged back into horrifying clarity. Grief morphed into anger, and he felt the urge to run, to escape. But escape was an illusion. Clenching his fists, Mark locked eyes with the shadow. "No, I won't let you dictate my life anymore." As he stepped closer, the light pulsed again, fighting off the encroaching darkness. Could it really be a sanctuary? Could they wield it against their tormentors? The keeper's words resurfaced in his mind. He had to confront his demons. "Mark," Sarah screamed, pulling him back, her eyes wide in dread. "What if we get lost in the shadows?" "Then we'll find our way back," he shot back, baffled by how invigorating the fear had become. He could feel Sarah's pulse underneath his fingers, steadying him. "We can do this." Just then, a blinding flash engulfed them as the keeper reappeared, her presence sharp against the shadowy forms. "Every confrontation has a cost," she warned, her voice weaving through the whirling madness. "Lose yourself to despair, and it'll consume you whole." The wild shadows leaped with a ferocious hunger, but Mark stood firm, his past clawing at him from all sides. Fists clenched, he faced the version of himself he had buried, his cowardice, refusal to forgive, and the loss he feared would taint his future. Katie and Sarah lent their strength, standing beside him, a united front against the encroaching chaos. Just then, the ground beneath them trembled. A crack split the earth as a wall of darkness surged toward them, leaving only a sliver of light behind. The shadows hissed, their whispers boiling into a cacophony of dread. "Together! We stay together!" Mark yelled, voice echoing in the void, already feeling the cut of shadows clawing at his heels, forcing their way into his thoughts. As the malevolent tide threatened to drown them, Mark put all his energy into one desperate shout. "You don't own us!" The pulse of warmth surged, pushing against the dark, a beacon of defiance. But as they braced against the onslaught, something broke free from the shadows, a figure that made even the keeper freeze in horror, eyes wide, breath caught.
It stepped forward, cloaked and ominous, forcing the others back with its mere presence. "What have you brought to me?" the figure croaked, its voice resonating with the weight of ages, as if the shadows themselves had given life to its terrifying form. Mark's blood ran cold. He could feel the dread rising, choking him as the room dimmed, the flickering light all but snuffed out. The fog thickened again around them, the world narrowing to the overwhelming figure standing tall amid the chaos. What was this entity, and what demands would it lay upon them? "Are you ready to pay?" it hissed. Shockwave after shockwave of terror reverberated through the three friends as they braced themselves, fighting against the tide that sought to pull them back into despair. What price would they have to pay to reclaim the light? Mark's breath hitched in his throat. The figure loomed larger, shadows draping around it like a shroud, whispering secrets that felt ancient and wrong. The keeper stood helpless, fear twisting her features, a stark contrast to the power she once wielded. "Pay," Mark echoed, disbelief mixing with righteous anger, each syllable like steel against the weight of despair. "We've paid enough." But deep inside, a gnawing doubt took root. What could they possibly owe this creature? Sarah gripped his arm tighter, her eyes darting between Mark and the creature. "We can't let it get to us," she urged, but panic clung to her words like mist. "Your souls," the entity hissed, its voice a sickening blend of venom and seduction. "For every step you take towards the light, something must be relinquished in return. Sacrifice is the price of salvation."
The shadows behind it twisted and churned, echoing the pain of hundreds, friends lost, chances missed, lives never lived. Mark's heart raced as memories flooded him, faces he had tried to forget clawing at his consciousness, desperate to be acknowledged. "No!" He felt the surge of defiance again, but a creeping dread intertwined with his resolve. What would he have to lose? "What do you want from us?" Mark shouted, voice rising above the cacophony, whispers curling around them. All at once, the figure extended an arm, long and skeletal, pointing directly at him. "You know. You always have." Mark's stomach flipped. A memory flickered, Katie's laughter ringing in his ears, a warmth that felt like home, shattered by the noise of a car crash, a moment's careless distraction that turned into eternal darkness. Guilt tightened its unyielding grip, and he stumbled back, trembling. Suddenly, the ground shook violently beneath them, fissures opening like ravenous jaws. Mark looked at Sarah and Katie, their expressions mirrored his dread. "Stay together," he yelled, though his voice wavered as shadows surged like a tidal wave, threatening to bury them all. The keeper finally broke her static, her voice trembling. "Only by facing your true selves can you defeat him. Only then can you reclaim the light." Mark's pulse quickened. Could they really confront themselves? Each step he took back seemed to draw a price, exposing vulnerabilities buried too long. He glanced at Sarah, eyes glistening with tears, and then at Katie, who stood resolute despite trembling hands. "Mark," Sarah said softly, "I'm scared, but we're here together." With her words wrapping around him like a lifeline, he found a measure of strength, though Canik gnawed hungrily. "We confront him together, then. Our pasts don't define us." The figure's laughter echoed cruelly, a mocking symphony of disdain. "You think you can defy what you truly are?" Before he could respond, the shadows lunged at them, tendrils swirling like fog, gripping him with a cold touch reminiscent of dozens of lost moments. "Hold on!" Mark shouted, but it was already too late. The ground beneath them gave way, and the trio fell into a void darker than night, surrounded by fragments of their fears, regrets, shadows of the past, memories turned grotesque and terrifying. "What now?" Sarah cried, her voice muffled by the chaos swallowing them whole. The keeper's voice cut through the chaos, clearer, more defined. "You must face it. You can't escape." Mark felt his heart racing, the air growing thin around him as he struggled against the grip of shadows tightening like a noose. Would they lose themselves entirely, or could they find a way to fight through the dark? A deep resonance echoed, filling the space with dread anticipation as the ground shifted around them. The darkness parted, revealing an abyss, a gate to their haunted past.
"Here, the challenge begins," hissed the figure from the shadows, closing in once more, a cruel gleam in its hollow gaze. What truths would they unearth? And could they escape the horrors that lurked within themselves? Mark stumbled as they fell, everything spinning in chaotic shadows. The familiar faces of his past flickered in and out of view,
Moments lost, smiles faded, forgive me eyes pleading from the depths of despair. Each snapshot clawed at his heart. "Mark, help!" Katie's voice cut sharp through the fog, twisting like a knife. It snapped him back, igniting a fire of urgency. "Hold on to me!" he shouted, reaching for her. They locked fingers, Sarah gripping him on the other side, their bond an anchor in this swirling madness. The ground solidified beneath them. The shadows swirled, swirling memories taking form, his father frowning in disappointment, friends drifting away like evening mist, mistakes manifesting into horrific caricatures. "No more!" Mark roared, a primal growl forcing itself from his throat. "You don't get to own us any longer." Brimming with strength, Mark pushed through, powered by the love he held for his family. "We're more than our pasts," he yelled, and with a sudden surge the light flickered back into being, illuminating their path forward. "Remember the love," Sarah's voice rang pure, a litany against the shadows. "It's what binds us." Together they pressed on, each memory of joy, laughter, and warmth flooding their hearts, driving the darkness away inch by inch. The keeper sighed, and the shadows shivered in fear. It was working. "Face the darkness within," the figure hissed, rearing back with a twisted snarl. "You think light will save you? It burdens you." But they didn't falter. Memories poured forth, Katie's first steps, Sarah's laughter filling a summer afternoon, the family dinners where love hung thick in the air. With every recollection the shadow thinned, retreating like mist before the dawn. But then came the figure of a broken friend, his old best buddy's face twisted in pain. "You let me down, Mark," the specter rasped, floating ever closer, searching for an opening. "I tried to save you." The pain felt tangible, suffocating. Mark remembered the call he missed, the last chance slipped through his fingers like grains of sand. I thought I could fix it." "Your failure hounds you still," the voice taunted, pulling him into the depths of despair with its icy grip. "No," Sarah interjected, squeezing his hand tighter. "You let go of the guilt. You did what you could." A flicker of hope ignited against the tide of sorrow, and Mark clung to it fiercely. "I'm sorry," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I can't keep living under that shadow. I release it. I forgive myself." Energy surged, the walls shifting and expanding as shadows recoiled from their resolve. Katie chimed in, voice bright and steady. "And I forgive you, Daddy. I need you now." The shadow screamed.
He could feel the darkness dissipating around them, the light unfurling like a bright bloom pushing through concrete. Now, together! They rose like phoenixes from the ashes of their own making, breaking free from the constraints the shadows had wrapped around them tightly. The being's laughter erupted in fury, twisting the air menacingly. "You cannot escape your past." But they were stronger now, hands locked in unity as a combined force of love surged towards that figure, illuminating the darkness. They struck out at the beast, pushing their collective light, fighting against the tide, refusing to be bound any longer. In an explosion of brilliance, the figure crumbled. The shadows shrieked and writhed, collapsing inward on themselves until they shattered. Mark gasped as the darkness fell away like a veil, revealing a luminous field of light stretching infinitely. They stumbled forward into the warmth, embraced by bubbles of laughter and joy twinkling like stars. Mark turned to look at Sarah and Katie, faces radiant with relief and happiness. His heart swelled, warmed by their resilience and spirit. "I never want to lose you again," he murmured, pulling them close. "Nor us you," Sarah replied, her voice steady and soothing. "Let's go home," Katie giggled, blowing a kiss to the fading shadows. Mark gave a soft laugh, feeling awareness rush through him. Their journey had been dark, but the bonds of family had pulled them out. They were something that darkness could never extinguish. With hearts entwined, they stepped forward towards the glow of a new beginning, the shadows nothing more than a terrifying memory fading into the distance. And with the warmth of love enveloping them, they knew their worst nightmares were behind, and a fresh horizon awaited. The figure in the dark had been vanquished. They were free. Together. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now. It's time to show your support and keep us going. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I'm dying to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Get the word out and keep the community alive.